The story begins with a young man named Elliot, riding the metro. He feels uneasy, suspecting that people are following him. His eyes catch two men in black, staring directly at him. Elliot becomes convinced that it's because of what he did last night. A flashback shows Elliot at Ron's coffee shop. Elliot confronts the owner, Ron, saying he hacked Ron's network after observing traffic. He discovered that Ron has been running a child illegal website, using Tor to hide it. Ron is shocked and panics, assuming Elliot wants to blackmail him. He refuses to pay, thinking Elliot would eventually tell the police. Elliot clarifies that he already tipped off the police and refuses any bribes, stating he doesn't care about money. While riding the subway, a stranger tries to engage Elliot, asking him what's going on around them. Elliot chooses to ignore the man, staying silent. The man, however, persists, commenting that it's an exciting time in the world. Elliot greets his imaginary friend, the audience, with a hello. He explains that what he's about to reveal is top secret, a conspiracy involving the top 1%. Elliot firmly believes they are following him. He regrets not going to Angela's birthday party. Later, Elliot enters Allsafe Cybersecurity, where he works as an engineer. Before he gets to his desk, his boss Gideon calls him to a meeting with Angela. E-Corp, one of their biggest clients, has been hacked again. They discuss how to handle the latest attack. After the meeting, Angela confronts Elliot for not attending her birthday party. A flashback shows Elliot standing outside the party but choosing not to go in. Angela brings him back to reality, upset that he didn't try. The conversation ends when Ollie interrupts. At his therapist Krista's office, Elliot tells his imaginary friend how easy it was to hack her. He knows she's divorced and looking for a partner online. She's currently dating a man named Michael. Krista asks Elliot what disappoints him so much about society. In his mind, Elliot reflects on his frustrations with capitalism and the impact of social media. He respects Krista because she understands loneliness and wants to protect people from it. When she asks why he thinks she understands, he deflects, saying he doesn't know. Back at Allsafe, Ollie invites Elliot to lunch, but Elliot declines, saying he has plans. Ollie admits he feels awkward and wants to get along. Elliot tells his imaginary friend that after hacking Ollie, he found that Ollie had cheated on Angela several times. Elliot considers telling Angela but isn't ready to deal with the fallout. Ollie, oblivious, just wants Elliot to like him, and Elliot agrees to try harder. Elliot reflects that Ollie isn't really bad, just too clueless to be truly evil. His real disdain is reserved for companies like E-Corp, which he calls Evil Corporation. He hates the executives there. Elliot crosses paths with E-Corp's CTO, Terry Colby, who he considers an arrogant idiot for using outdated tech like a BlackBerry. Tyrell Wellick, another E-Corp executive, approaches Elliot and comments on his use of GNOME, a Linux desktop environment. Tyrell mentions that, despite being an executive, he personally uses KDE. Before leaving, he makes a cryptic comment to Elliot, hinting that working together will be interesting. At home, Elliot reveals his struggle with depression and his morphine use to cope with life. He keeps his daily dose under 30 milligrams and uses Suboxone for withdrawal. When his supply runs out, he contacts his neighbor Shayla for more. She offers it for free, but he insists on paying. They end up doing ecstasy together and later wind up in bed. As Shayla sleeps, Elliot smokes and gets a notification from Krista's Instagram, showing she's with Michael. Elliot tracks Michael using a fake story about losing his keys in a taxi. He watches Krista and Michael from a distance, noticing the men in black again. He approaches Michael and asks to borrow his phone to call his mother, but really, he saves Michael's number in his own phone. Elliot deletes the call record before handing the phone back. Later, Angela calls Elliot to come to Allsafe because of what appears to be a DDoS attack on E-Corp. Elliot arrives and quickly realizes it's more than that. The servers are infected with malware that can do serious damage. The only solution is to shut down the servers, clean the infection, and reboot. Gideon and Elliot fly to the Dulles server farm to deal with the issue. While investigating the infected server, Elliot discovers a file named F Society and a text file that says "Leave me here." He hesitates. Instead of deleting the files, he cancels the command and reconfigures the server so only he has access to it. He reassures himself that no one will find out. On the plane ride back, Gideon confides in Elliot that he's gay and feels stressed about the recent hacks, fearing the company could collapse if E-Corp pulls out. Elliot tries to reassure him, explaining that hackers usually lose interest and move on. He promises Gideon that he will track down the hackers. On the subway, the mysterious man who approached Elliot earlier sits across from him. His jacket has Mr. Robot written on it. He invites Elliot to join him, but only if Elliot didn't delete the hack. They get off the subway together, and Mr. Robot shares a story about his father, who was a thief and thought stealing made him free, though in reality, he was trapped. Mr. Robot tells Elliot he's trapped too, but promises to break him out. They arrive at Coney Island, where Mr. Robot introduces Elliot to his team of hackers but keeps their plan a secret. Back home, Elliot meets Angela at his door. She invites him to get high and watch Back to the Future too. Inside, they find Shayla still asleep in his bed. Angela leaves, irritated, and Elliot tells Shayla to go too. Elliot searches for information on Society and Mr. Robot but comes up empty. He prepares an envelope of evidence for Gideon and E-Corp. The next day at Allsafe, Elliot is in a meeting with Angela, Gideon, E-Corp executives, and FBI agents. He plans to hand over the white envelope with evidence, but after Colby rudely dismisses Angela, he switches it for a blue envelope that frames Colby. Tyrell notices the change but doesn't intervene, handing the envelope to the FBI. Weeks pass with no word from the FBI. Elliot continues trying to hack Michael but can't find useful information. He confronts Michael, revealing his infidelity and threatening to expose him unless he breaks up with Krista. Michael agrees, and Elliot demands Michael's dog to help with his loneliness. At his next therapy session, Elliot notices that Krista has been crying, likely because Michael told her the truth. While Elliot talks with Angela later, a news bulletin reports that Terry Colby has been arrested for his supposed involvement in the E-Corp hack. Elliot celebrates, but moments later, men in black take him to a conference room. In disbelief, Elliot turns to his imaginary friend, hoping they are witnessing the same thing. Elliot sits silently as a group of men in suits gather at a round table, with Tyrell Wellick leading the conversation. Tyrell makes a pointed remark, noting that with a gun, a man can rob a bank, but with a bank, he can rob the world. Tyrell explains that power belongs to those who take it. He tells Elliot this meeting may be illegal, so he has 11 lawyers present. He offers Elliot a job as the head of cybersecurity at E-Corp. Elliot asks for time to think about it. After dismissing the lawyers, Tyrell tells Elliot he is on his way to becoming CTO. He wants to thank the hackers who took down Terry Colby. Tyrell warns Elliot that E-Corp will internalize its network soon, which means Allsafe will go out of business. He suggests Elliot should join him, but Elliot declines. Elliot is driven home by Tyrell's driver, Mr. Sutherland. Sutherland gives Elliot Tyrell's contact number. As Elliot heads to his apartment, he sees Shayla arguing with Fernando Vera. Vera drives away, and Shayla says he's just a former boss who won't leave her alone. When Elliot asks for drugs, Shayla hesitates but agrees. At home, he finds Tyrell's email password and starts reading through his emails. Elliot tells the audience that this feels too easy, like Tyrell wants him to hack him. Panicked, Elliot destroys his computer, microwaving chips and drilling through hard drives. He puts the pieces in a trash bag and dumps it in a subway station trash bin. At Allsafe, Elliot notices people watching news about Terry Colby's arrest. He wonders if he helped Tyrell by destroying Colby's life. Gideon calls Elliot into his office and gives him a raise for saving the company. Gideon asks about the DAT file that Elliot found earlier. Elliot worries that Gideon is suspicious. He says the file could be junk, but Gideon is satisfied. He asks Elliot to keep investigating since F-Society could be a threat. Elliot is alarmed when Gideon mentions F-Society. Gideon shows him a video F-Society just released. In the video, a masked figure speaks on behalf of F-Society, accusing E-Corp of evil deeds and claiming they have stolen data that could destroy the company. They demand the release of Terry Colby, the cancellation of global debts, and the dismantling of E-Corp. They threaten to release the data if their demands are not met. Later, Elliot runs into Angela and Ollie on the street. They congratulate him for saving the company and invite him to dinner. Elliot hesitates but sees two men in black approaching. He accepts the invite and leaves quickly. At home, Elliot tells the audience he is worried about F-Society's plans. He didn't know they wanted to free Colby. He thinks about cutting ties with them. When he enters his apartment, he finds Darlene, one of the F-Society hackers, in his shower. She acts like she belongs there. Darlene borrows his clothes and tells him he was expected at their last meeting. She seems to know him well, but Elliot pretends he doesn't recognize her. Elliot and Darlene take the subway to Coney Island. Elliot asks how she knows him so well, but she acts like it's normal. He tells the audience that Darlene is either weird or crazy. He considers telling Gideon everything. As they switch trains to avoid the men following them, Elliot realizes Darlene can see them too. They aren't a hallucination. At the F Society hideout, the other hackers, Mr. Robot, Romero, Mobley, and Trenton, congratulate Elliot for his work. Darlene inquires about the Steel Mountain plan, but Mr. Robot responds that it's not ready yet. The group then splits up, leaving Elliot to have a private conversation with Mr. Robot. Mr. Robot explains their plan. E-Corp and other companies keep backup data at Steel Mountain, a secure facility. They devise a plan to use Elliot's all-safe access to hack a nearby gas plant, causing an explosion that would destroy Steel Mountain. Horrified, Elliot immediately rejects the idea, refusing to be involved in anything that could take lives. Just as he attempts to walk away, Mr. Robot challenges him, asking whether he is a 1 or a 0, a yes or a no. Elliot argues that life is more complicated than that, but Mr. Robot insists that every decision is binary. Elliot walks away, and Mr. Robot warns him not to come back if he leaves. On the subway ride home, Elliot wonders if he should turn F Society in. Back at his apartment, he checks on Shayla and finds Vera there, shirtless. Vera tells Elliot that Shayla is in the tub and implies she belongs to him. Elliot says Vera is the worst person he has ever hacked. Vera runs drugs and guns, and his illegal activities are poorly secured online. It would be easy for Elliot to turn him in, but Vera is Shayla's only supplier, and Elliot needs him. Vera leaves, making it clear that Shayla is under his control. Elliot breaks into the bathroom and finds Shayla bruised and drugged in the tub. It's obvious Vera raped her. Shayla begs Elliot not to do anything about Vera, she needs his money. Elliot walks the streets, thinking about what Mr. Robot said. Choices are binary. He can do nothing and continue getting drugs from Vera, or he can take action. After what happened to Shayla, Elliot feels he has no choice. In Krista's office, Elliot complains about not being in control of his life. As he speaks, scenes of him gathering evidence on Vera play. He uploads files to the NYPD tip line. Later, we see Vera and his associates getting arrested. Elliot tells Krista that he had been part of a project he thought was special, but it turned out to be a mistake. Krista says Elliot has choices, unlike his father, who felt trapped. Elliot becomes upset and refuses to talk about his father. At home, Elliot burns his files on Vera onto a CD labeled as music. His phone rings, Angela is calling, but he ignores it. At Angela's apartment, she hangs up, worried about Elliot. Ollie is at his laptop, trying to use the CD he got earlier. His computer freezes, and he gets an email from Stella B with a suggestive message. Ollie hides the email from Angela and lies about meeting a friend. He leaves, but his laptop's camera stays on, pointing toward Angela in the bathroom. The CD guy is shown sitting in a library, watching the feed from Ollie's laptop. He closes the window and opens a chat in Chinese, typing, "Cisco, we're in." The next day, Elliot finds Mr. Robot on a boardwalk. He tells Mr. Robot he has a plan to destroy the Steel Mountain backups without killing anyone, but Mr. Robot says they need to deal with something first. Elliot wants back in, but Mr. Robot insists that Elliot talk about his father. Elliot explains that his father was his best friend and worked at E-Corp until they fired him. His father developed leukemia, but made Elliot promise not to tell anyone, even as he got sicker. Eventually, Elliot told his mom, which made his father so angry that he pushed Elliot out of a window. They never spoke again. Elliot asks if they're good now. Mr. Robot nods and places a hand on Elliot's shoulder. He asks if Elliot ever thought he deserved what happened. Elliot denies it. Mr. Robot suddenly pushes Elliot off the boardwalk, sending him crashing onto the rocks below. As Elliot walks away, Mr. Robot reminds him that he failed to honor the sacred pact he once made. Tyrell Wellick starts his day rehearsing a speech while exercising and dressing. He practices for a meeting with E-Corp's CEO, convincing himself that he will be the next CTO. Standing in front of a mirror, he repeats to himself that he will become the next CTO of the company. Tyrell sits in the CEO's waiting room, mentally rehearsing. When Philip Price, the CEO, finally appears, Tyrell prepares to speak, but Price interrupts. He tells Tyrell that another candidate has excited the board, and Tyrell should reschedule. Price leaves before Tyrell can say a word. Dejected, Tyrell gets into a car with two E-Corp security men. They drive to a street corner, where Tyrell meets a homeless man. Tyrell pays him $300, puts on rubber gloves, and viciously beats the man, who doesn't defend himself. Tyrell's guards wait in the car, and after he's done, They drive him home, leaving the homeless man on the ground. Elliot wakes up in a hospital bed, bruised and bandaged. He reflects on how debugging is about understanding why a mistake exists. Shayla and Krista are by his side, and Elliot lies to them, saying he was attacked by kids. Krista suggests rehab, but Elliot insists he isn't an addict. Krista says he can leave if he passes a drug test. Elliot isn't worried. He uses this hospital because its network security is weak, and he can alter his records. Out of the hospital, Elliot and Shayla stop at a store, where Elliot quickly snorts morphine. The store's credit card system is down due to the F Society hack on E-Corp. Elliot tells the viewer he was the bug that F Society found and exploited. Shayla asks if Elliot had anything to do with Vera's arrest, but he denies it. At home, Darlene is waiting for him, but Elliot tells her to leave. To the viewer, he says that a bug is never just a mistake, it represents something bigger. Angela jogs on the street when a man drops a wallet. She runs after him, returning it, only to learn from a woman that the man had stolen her purse. Meanwhile, Ollie receives an email from Stella B, accompanied by a threatening message, warning him that they have control over him and giving him a deadline of 100 hours. He's instructed to put a CD into one of the work computers. He hides the email from Angela, who arrives home and talks about the wallet incident. As she showers, Ollie receives a phone call reiterating the 100-hour deadline. Cisco, observing Ollie through his laptop camera, types a message into a chat, predicting that Ollie will break soon. At Allsafe, Gideon briefs the team, including Elliot, Angela, and Ollie, on tracking F Society. He invites everyone to his home for dinner, but Elliot declines. Alone, Gideon expresses concern about Elliot's recent behavior, but Elliot remains distant. Elliot spots Mr. Robot at the office. Mr. Robot offers to talk at the bar next door. At the bar, Mr. Robot apologizes for hurting Elliot, suggesting that Elliot's dad would have done the same. When Elliot asks about the plan, Mr. Robot says it's over. Without Elliot, there is no plan. He leaves, telling Elliot that it's done. Elliot feels relieved. He tells the viewer that with F Society gone, he can live a normal life. He dreams of having a relationship with Shayla, going to the gym, and living without bugs in his life. He returns to Gideon and asks to come to the dinner, bringing Shayla. Ollie is about to insert the CD into his computer when Angela arrives. He removes the disc, and they leave work together. Tyrell is at home, looking up information about Anwar Rezai's, the secretary of Philip Price. His wife, Joanna, is pregnant and asks about his plan to attend a gay club for work. She isn't sure about it, but Tyrell insists it's necessary and leaves. Elliot invites Shayla to Gideon's dinner, but Shayla is upset. She feels used, like Vera did before. She accuses Elliot of not really knowing her. As she shows Elliot her artwork, he realizes he didn't truly know her and acknowledges she has her own way of navigating life, just like him. Outside the club, Tyrell flirts with Anwar, eventually kissing him. To the viewer, Elliot remarks that a bug's purpose is to help fix mistakes and right wrongs. At Gideon's dinner, Elliot, Shayla, and the others arrive. Gideon pulls Elliot aside and tells him he checked with the Dulles server farm again and found nothing. Gideon reassures Elliot that he values him and hugs him awkwardly. During small talk after dinner, Angela and Elliot share childhood memories. Suddenly, a news broadcast reveals a new data leak from E-Corp, exposing that they knew about the 1993 toxic waste leak that killed Elliot's father and Angela's mother. F Society orchestrated this leak, pushing Elliot back into their world. He realizes his perfect life is crumbling. Elliot leaves the apartment, followed by a tearful Angela. In a flashback, young Elliot sits with his mother at a bus stop, grieving his father's death. His mother is dismissive, calling his father weak. Elliot reflects that bugs force software to evolve, to change into something new. Tyrell and Anwar finish an intense love encounter. While Anwar showers, Tyrell hacks Anwar's phone, installing spyware to monitor him. He hides the evidence and joins Anwar in the shower. Back at Ollie's apartment, Angela finds out about the blackmail message. Ollie explains that the hacker is threatening her and her father's finances. Angela, initially wanting to break up, decides they need to come up with a plan to handle it. In his office, Gideon reviews reports about the F Society DAT file and Terry Colby's involvement. He calls Dulles again to discuss the server issue. At home, Tyrell finds Joanna in bed, requesting bondage. She discusses his progress toward becoming CTO and suggests they have dinner with Scott Knowles, the potential CTO candidate, and his wife. Tyrell hesitates, but Joanna insists. Elliot returns to the F Society hideout. The group watches as he opens his laptop. They gather around, waiting for his lead. Elliot looks at them and begins outlining the plan. Elliot stares at the last line of morphine in front of him. He reflects on how this moment represents the culmination of everything: busting Vera, meeting Mr. Robot, creating his imaginary companion. He acknowledges that he chose this path. At the F Society hideout, Elliot explains the plan to destroy the Steel Mountain tapes. They'll insert a Raspberry Pi into the network to create a backdoor, then use it to raise the temperature above 95 degrees, which will destroy the tapes. Romero objects, saying they need physical access to the facility, but Elliot insists the guards are the weak link. However, Elliot starts to feel withdrawal symptoms and leaves the group to work out the details. Back at his apartment, Elliot contemplates the morphine. He knows he's breaking his own rule, but he has no Suboxone to counteract it. Needing to function, he snorts the line. While walking outside, Elliot spots two men in suits, one in front and one behind him. He stops one and asks what he wants, but the man ignores him and walks on. At home, Elliot is startled by a pounding at his door. He fears E-Corp security, but it's only Darlene. She says the rest of F Society wants to go over the plan. At the hideout, Romero announces that E-Corp is moving copies of their tapes to 4 other locations. If they hit one, the others will become even more secure. Elliot looks over the research and concludes that the copying won't happen until April 1st, so they still have time. While Romero remains skeptical, the others begin to prepare. Mobley works on the thermostat hack, Trenton develops the network attack, and Darlene contacts the Dark Army. Elliot will plant the hardware inside Steel Mountain. Despite his worsening withdrawal, he insists he can do it. Romero and Mobley steal a car, leaving Elliot alone with Mr. Robot. Elliot asks for input, but Mr. Robot says it's Elliot's plan. They drive out of the city, Elliot sweating and sick. He muses to the viewer about demons, processes that work in the background while attention is elsewhere. He says his demons control him, more than most people realize. Then he vomits. They arrive at a motel, and Elliot collapses into bed. Romero warns that Elliot will get worse: fever, convulsions, and paranoia. Elliot acknowledges to the viewers that Romero may be right but tells himself he's about to change the world. At her apartment, Angela sneaks Ollie's ID badge and the Trojan CD out of his bag, claiming she's going to brunch with her dad. Instead, she goes to Elliot's apartment, but Shayla answers the door. Shayla doesn't know where Elliot is but invites Angela to walk the dog with her. Meanwhile, Darlene and Trenton visit a club filled with people playing ping pong. Darlene looks for her Dark Army contact, but no one knows where he is. Trenton doubts he will show up, but Darlene remains confident. Elliot's condition worsens. Mobley and Romero complain that he's too sick to do his part, but Mr. Robot urges them to wait. When they leave, Elliot tells Mr. Robot he needs one more hit to make it through. Mr. Robot considers this. They visit a house where Elliot buys drugs. A dealer offers him a syringe, and although Elliot had promised himself he wouldn't inject, he gives in. As the drugs hit, Elliot feels relief. Suddenly, gunfire erupts in the house. A stray bullet hits the dealer's girlfriend, and Elliot collapses. In the chaos, Elliot watches AF Society video flash on the TV. The masked figure speaks of exposing society's villains and helping people recover their lost memories. Elliot finds himself back at the F Society lair. The masked figure hands him a key and says it belongs to him now. He puts on the mask and hears the figure tell him to find his monster and turn the key. Later, Elliot walks through his old neighborhood, where a mailbox labeled The Aldersons stands. A young girl on skates hands him a key. Elliot heads home and finds Tyrell Wellick waiting for him, holding a key. Elliot talks to his fish, Qwerty, who complains that nothing ever changes in the fishbowl. Qwerty asks to be moved to the window. Elliot finds himself in a restaurant with Angela, who is eating fish. He protests, saying that the fish is his friend, to which Angela casually replies that it's also delicious. The waiter brings Elliot a slice of raspberry pie, but when he cuts into it, he discovers a key hidden inside. Angela suddenly rises from her seat and makes the bold announcement. The entire restaurant breaks into applause in response. Elliot, now dressed in a tuxedo, returns to the F Society lair. Angela confronts him, telling him he won't change the world because he's too afraid of his inner monster. She hands him the key, but when Elliot tries to take it, she informs him that it doesn't fit. Suddenly, Elliot wakes up alone in a motel room, sobbing as he realizes his isolation. Just then, Mr. Robot appears and reassures him that he's not alone and that they are in this together until the end. Meanwhile, Darlene and Trenton finally meet the Dark Army contact, a man in a devil mask who leads them into a limousine. At a nightclub, Angela and Shayla take pills, both feeling detached. Angela laughs, saying she has to be at work in a few hours, but Shayla isn't worried. She kisses Angela, telling her to only focus on herself. The next day, Angela uses Ollie's badge to enter the Allsafe office. She logs into his computer and inserts the CD. Just as the receptionist arrives, Angela ejects the CD and leaves. Elliot reflects to the viewers that demons control us all. Despite creating his imaginary friend, he realizes that everyone must face their demons alone. As he speaks, we see the F Society crew preparing for their mission. A car speeds down a country road toward a distant mountain. Fernando Vera paces in his prison cell, deep in thought. In the visiting room, he meets his brother Isaac and attorney Carol. Carol tells him he's facing years in prison for murder, with no plea deal. The DA has a strong case, including an anonymous tip and solid evidence. As he reviews the evidence, an idea strikes him. Later, back in his cell, Vera begins pacing once more. A smile spreads across his face as he comes to a realization. He declares that he now understands who he's dealing with, as if uncovering a hidden truth. Meanwhile, Elliot, Mr. Robot, Mobley, and Romero are in a coffee shop. Mr. Robot brushes against a man with a Steel Mountain ID badge, swiping his RFID data. They use the stolen information to make a duplicate badge and drive to Steel Mountain. Romero uses the badge to get through the gate, and they park. In the car, Elliot reflects on the flaws of the people around him. He observes that Mobley lacks discipline, Romero is a know-it-all, and Mr. Robot is insane. Their plan involves gaining access to Level 2 of Steel Mountain by exploiting employees. Mobley has researched Bill Harper, a sales associate, and his boss, Wendy Gallagher. Elliot plans to get past Bill, then use Wendy's pregnancy as a pretext to get her away from her desk. Once inside, Elliot will hack the climate control system to destroy E-Corp's backup tapes. Using the alias Sam Sepiol, Elliot enters Steel Mountain's waiting room and meets Bill Harper. Bill refuses to give Elliot a tour without an appointment. When Bill looks up Elliot's fake Wikipedia page, hastily created by Mobley, he changes his mind and agrees to show him around. Angela packs to leave Ollie, who protests. She tells him she's already ruined his life, gives him back his ID and the CD she used on his computer, and walks out. During the tour, Mr. Robot instructs Elliot to break Bill down emotionally. Elliot projects his own feelings onto Bill, telling him that no one cares about him and that he's insignificant. Bill, visibly shaken, calls for a supervisor. Instead of Wendy, Trudy Davis arrives, throwing the team into a panic. They have no plan for her. Mobley sends a fake message to Trudy's phone, pretending to be her husband at the hospital. Shaken, Trudy leaves Elliot alone in the hallway. Elliot tries to access Level 2 but runs into problems with a palm print scanner. As he searches for another way in, he runs into Tyrell Wellick, who asks why he's at Steel Mountain. Elliot nervously explains he's there for a routine check. Tyrell, seemingly unfazed, invites Elliot to lunch. The team in the car freaks out, but Mr. Robot insists they stay the course. At lunch, Tyrell talks about the power and privilege he enjoys. He points out their waiter, mocking him for living an ordinary life of servitude. Elliot, growing anxious, notices two security guards approaching. They hand Tyrell a document to sign, and he casually dismisses them. Elliot excuses himself to the restroom, where he vomits from stress. While there, he finds a maintenance room with a thermostat. He begins installing the Raspberry Pi, but Tyrell walks in. Tyrell admits he knows Elliot framed Terry Colby and understands Elliot's motivation, revenge. Tyrell doesn't plan to expose him but wanted to understand Elliot's weakness. Elliot finishes the installation and leaves. Back at F Society, Darlene tries to sync their payload with the Dark Army, but they pull out of the plan. Frustrated, Darlene rants, but Mr. Robot stops her from executing the attack alone. Elliot convinces her to stand down for now. Elliot reflects on how his father once told him that changing the world is slow and exhausting. As he remembers, we see Angela unpacking at her dad's house. She discovers unpaid hospital bills, including one from E-Corp. Shocked, she hides the papers and heads out for a run. Elliot and Darlene return to his apartment building and find Shayla's door open, with her phone lying on the floor. Elliot picks up the phone and hears Vera on the other end. Vera hints that everything is falling into place, suggesting that sometimes the universe aligns perfectly with his intentions. Angela, meanwhile, is out running at night. She pauses at a fork in the road. Elliot and Shayla sit at a table in a busy neighborhood restaurant. Across from them, Fernando Vera's brother Isaac and DJ watch. Elliot and Shayla aren't eating much, just sitting in silence, reflecting on how they first met. Elliot promises Shayla he'll get her out of this, but Isaac interrupts, saying time's up. He drags Shayla out of the restaurant, while DJ stands over Elliot, preventing him from acting. DJ then leads Elliot to a back room. In the back room, a phone rings, and Vera is on the other end. Vera talks about the meaning behind their names. Elliot's means brave traveler, and Vera's, savage. But Elliot is focused on Shayla's safety. Vera, however, wants Elliot to use his hacking skills to break him out of prison tonight. Elliot protests that it takes weeks to find security holes, but Vera insists it has to happen now. He promises that once he's free, they'll all be together again, Shayla included. Elliot, Isaac, and DJ return to Elliot's apartment. Isaac forces Elliot to focus on hacking Vera out of jail, warning him not to get distracted. While reviewing the prison system, Elliot reflects that hacking it isn't impossible, it's just another industrial control system. As Isaac and DJ hang around, Elliot grows suspicious of Isaac and runs a Wi-Fi scan, finding a signal from Isaac's phone. Meanwhile, Angela, alone at Allsafe before work hours, pores over an article titled, "Did Colby implicate himself?" She prints out emails from the F Society data dump and reviews documents from her family's lawsuit against E-Corp. After calling several law firms about the Washington Township scandal, she finally connects with attorney Anthera Nair, who handled the case years ago. Outside the prison, Darlene scatters flash drives in the parking lot. One officer picks one up and plugs it into a computer, triggering an eTunes gift card scam. However, the malware detector catches it, and the officer quickly unplugs the device. Back at Elliot's apartment, the hack fails. Isaac slaps Elliot, demanding answers, but Elliot insists he needs to walk the dog. Once outside, he meets Darlene a block away and complains about the failed exploit. Darlene, frustrated, blames the time constraints. As they argue, DJ approaches with a gun and forces them back to the apartment. At Anthera Nair's office, Angela pushes her to reopen the case with the new data she found. Anthera dismisses it as internet gossip and reminds Angela of the power of E-Corp. She tells Angela that they'd need an insider witness, someone who was there when decisions were made. In an E-Corp meeting, Tyrell Wellick tries to sabotage Scott Knowles, the new CTO candidate, but Scott sees through his schemes. Scott reveals that Tyrell's wife has been in contact with Scott's wife, but he brushes off Tyrell's attempts to destabilize him. Back at Elliot's apartment, Angela shows up, but Isaac lets Elliot go outside to get rid of her. Angela talks about her meeting with Anthera but doesn't go into details. Elliot, distracted by his own crisis, tells her to trust herself. When Angela asks about Shayla, Elliot gives a vague answer before she leaves. On his way back inside, Elliot encounters Mr. Robot, who warns him that the situation with Vera won't end well. Mr. Robot urges Elliot to focus on F Society, where he can make a real difference, but Elliot is determined to find a way to save Shayla. Inside, Elliot packs his tools and announces he's ready to break Vera out. He demands to go to the jail immediately. Isaac, however, insists everyone comes along. On the way to the jail, Elliot reflects on how he misses the sense of control he once had. He knows he must save both Shayla and Darlene from Vera's crew. As they park near the jail, Elliot prepares for the hack, explaining to Vera that his phone is sniffing for any network signals. Vera, skeptical, warns that Elliot will be implicated when security checks the recordings. But Elliot has a plan to open all the cells at once, creating chaos. He also reveals that he's hacked Isaac's phone and Vera's entire operation. He controls it all. Elliot secures Vera's promise to leave him and Shayla alone, threatening to release everything if he's killed. Angela visits Terry Colby's townhouse, hoping to speak to him, but Colby refuses to meet with her. Outside the prison, Elliot tries to hack into the network, but finds only WPA2 protected networks, which are difficult to crack. However, he spots a police car nearby with an active Bluetooth connection. Using this vulnerability, he gains access to the prison system. Elliot returns to the car and tells Isaac the hack is ready. Isaac pulls him aside for a private talk. On a riverbank, Isaac confesses he doesn't want Vera free, he wants Vera dead, fearing for his own life. Elliot, calm, advises Isaac that freeing Vera gives him the best chance. Isaac considers this, lowers his gun, and they head back to the car. Isaac watches as Elliot hacks the prison through the Bluetooth connection. Meanwhile, Darlene distracts the officer in the car. Elliot executes the hack, opening all the prison cell doors at once. As alarms blare, prisoners flood out, but Vera walks calmly toward them. Vera thanks Elliot for his help, then instructs DJ to shoot Isaac, who falls dead. Vera compares himself to Cain, saying he will now wander the earth like a fugitive. He thanks Elliot but informs him that his operation no longer matters. Vera is leaving. Before getting into the car, Elliot asks where Shayla is. Vera tosses him the keys to Isaac's car, telling him she was with him all along. Elliot opens the trunk to find Shayla's lifeless body inside. Devastated, he turns away, his emotions overwhelming him. Police lights flash in the distance as Elliot pulls up his hood and runs into the night. Elliot is at home, setting up a line of morphine when he hears a new neighbor moving in next door. She introduces herself as Shayla and rushes in, asking for water to save her black betta fish. As she sits on his couch, she notices the morphine line and casually offers to hook him up with top-shelf drugs. Shayla asks for help moving a dresser, and later, they go outside, making awkward small talk. Elliot asks if she can get Suboxone, but her supplier doesn't have it. She says she might know someone who does, and they begin getting to know each other, though Shayla puts in more effort. Before leaving, she gives Elliot the fish. Fast forward to the present. Elliot meets with his therapist, Krista, feeling unsettled that he's beginning to get over Shayla's death, which happened a month ago. Krista hands him some forms, signaling that he's completed his required sessions. Elliot feels like she's trying to get rid of him, but Krista insists they still have work to do. Elliot, detached, signs the papers and leaves. Angela meets Anthara Nair and Terry Colby's lawyers. She proposes a private meeting with Colby, without the lawyers, to discuss information beneficial to him. Though skeptical, the lawyers agree to pass on the message to Colby. At Allsafe, Gideon offers Elliot some time off to grieve Shayla, but Elliot insists he doesn't need it. Gideon advises him to find someone with whom he can be his honest self. Elliot daydreams about how, in the early days of the internet, kids could view source on websites. He imagines if people had that same transparency, seeing their hidden truths. The idea of being honest with someone seems silly to him, but he thanks Gideon and leaves. Meanwhile, at a bar, Mr. Robot and Darlene discuss their next move. Mr. Robot is impressed by the media attention F Society has received but believes they need the Dark Army's help. Darlene explains that the Dark Army won't work with them anymore, and E-Corp has already secured backups of the data they wanted to destroy. Mr. Robot insists he has a plan in motion. Back in his apartment, Elliot burns a CD filled with all his files about Shayla. He reflects on the fact that this is all he has left of her and acknowledges how much he will miss her. He begins wiping his computer, destroying memory sticks and hard drives, though he doesn't notice a micro SD card falling, which his dog, Flipper, picks up. At E-Corp, Tyrell Wellick is distracted during a meeting with his executives, who gossip about other colleagues. When Tyrell hears one executive's comment about going gay to get ahead, he suddenly fires all three of them. Confused, the executives smile, thinking it's a joke, but Tyrell coldly assures them it's not. Angela receives word from Anthara that Colby's lawyers have secured total immunity for him, and he's agreed to meet with her. Anthara warns Angela that meeting Colby could be dangerous, given his power and influence. Mr. Robot visits Romero, who has been making THC skin cream. Mr. Robot tries to recruit Romero back into F Society, but Romero is hesitant, calling it a wasted effort. After some back and forth, Romero reluctantly agrees to rejoin the group. Angela meets Colby at his home. Initially dismissive and crude, Colby assumes Angela wants money. She tells him she has information that could help clear his name if he testifies about E-Corp's handling of the hazardous waste issue. Colby is mostly obscene, but Angela stops him by pointing out that walking away will make him look guilty. Reluctantly, Colby begins to consider her offer. Later, Elliot takes Flipper to the vet, where the vet discovers that the dog has swallowed something that may be causing internal problems. They decide to keep Flipper for observation until the issue resolves. Angela is walking when she gets a call from Anthara. Colby is willing to talk, and the meeting will happen immediately. Darlene meets Cisco at a library. Cisco is furious because Darlene used his credentials to hack into the Dark Army's chat system. He warns her that her actions put him in danger and tells her he doesn't want to see her again. However, the Dark Army has agreed to meet. Back at Colby's house, Angela pushes for him to testify. Colby reflects that the hazardous waste issue wasn't as sinister as it might seem. It was just business people running a company and making decisions. There was some awareness that it wasn't right, but they quickly moved on to other matters. At a festive E-Corp event, Scott Knowles is officially named CTO. In the background, Tyrell and Joanna Wellick observe. Tyrell, feeling defeated, approaches Sharon Knowles at the bar. They exchange flirtatious banter, and Tyrell suggests meeting on the roof later. Sharon walks away without giving a clear answer. Angela goes to Gideon's office, fully aware that her revelations about E-Corp will ruin Allsafe. Gideon, concerned about the fate of the company, tells her that she should consider the impact on the employees who will lose their jobs. On the roof, Tyrell meets Sharon, who mocks him for still being upset about not getting the CTO position. She taunts him, saying he's playing the game poorly. Tyrell, desperate, kisses her, and she kisses back. Things escalate quickly, and Tyrell begins strangling her. She struggles, but Tyrell doesn't stop until she dies. He wipes her neck with a cloth and flees the scene, panicking. The next day, Darlene meets with Trenton, explaining that the plan with the Dark Army is back on, and she needs Trenton's help. Trenton, uncertain, asks why Darlene is doing this. Darlene has no clear answer but insists they have the tools and the moment to make a difference. Meanwhile, Cisco tracks down Ollie, reminding him of the malicious CD he inserted at work. Cisco warns that Ollie must continue following their instructions, or there will be serious consequences. Elliot meets Krista at her office before hours. He confesses that he's been lying to her, he doesn't take his pills, and he's been hacking her, tracking her online presence. He knows about her struggles, her loneliness, and he admits he hacks everyone he knows. Elliot admits that he wants a way out of his loneliness, just like Krista does. He follows this by asking if that's what she wanted to hear, leaving her speechless and unable to respond. It's morning in a chic apartment, and Darlene stands on the balcony, wearing little, gazing out over the city. Her hookup, Xander Jones, already dressed for the day, joins her briefly. Darlene wonders aloud about the possibility of a revolution, but Xander, uninterested, dismisses the idea. He emphasizes that his job is to solve problems, not to ignite revolutions. With a quick kiss, he heads off to work. Once Xander is gone, Darlene searches his apartment, eventually discovering a safe under the bar. Using the graduation date on his MBA diploma as the combination, she opens the safe and retrieves a handgun, slipping it into her purse. Darlene heads to a ballet studio where Angela, her old childhood friend, is finishing up a call with Ollie. The two catch up briefly, with Angela reassuring Darlene that she's not getting back with Ollie despite his work issues. They talk about Elliot, both acknowledging that he's been going through a tough time. The ballet instructor arrives, and the friends take their places in the class. Meanwhile, Elliot is reflecting on how he hurt Krista. He burns a CD labeled, Talking Heads, Speaking in Tongues, containing all his hacked files on her, and adds it to his collection. He contemplates how easy it was to delve into her life, and how hard it is to let go of those he's observed. He then checks into the AirDream advanced metering system, which controls the HVAC for the Steel Mountain facilities, ensuring everything is in place for F Society's plan. Elliot meets Mr. Robot, confirming that everyone in the group is ready. As they talk, Darlene experiences an unsettling encounter on the subway. Two Asian men, clearly monitoring her, approach and cryptically warn her about following the correct commands. She puts her hand on the gun in her purse, but they walk away before anything escalates. At F Society's hideout, Elliot lays out the final plan. They've successfully planted malware in Steel Mountain's HVAC systems. The plan is to simultaneously raise the temperatures across all 5 facilities to destroy the backup tapes without triggering any alarms. As they're discussing the details, Elliot receives a text from Lloyd Chong, Allsafe's been hacked. Before Elliot can rush to Allsafe, Darlene arrives, visibly shaken. She believes the Dark Army is following her and hands Elliot the gun, warning that the upcoming meeting with White Rose could go south. Elliot returns the gun, he doesn't know how to use it. Darlene breaks protocol by adding her number to his phone, saying he needs it, even if F Society wouldn't approve. At E-Corp, Tyrell Wellick is mentally distant as he walks through the executive hallways. He gets distracted, spilling coffee on another executive. His assistant, Elizabeth, tells him that Gideon Goddard is waiting for him in his office. Tyrell brushes off his upcoming meetings but reluctantly agrees to see Gideon. Gideon informs Tyrell that the chain of custody on the Colby data file has been compromised, meaning it can't be used as evidence. He also shares that Allsafe is setting up a honeypot on server CS30, where F Society previously attacked. Tyrell, hiding his nervousness, listens as Gideon assures him they're doing everything to prevent future attacks. Just then, Gideon receives an urgent text, 911, entire network down. After Gideon leaves, Tyrell hacks into server CS30 and finds a suspicious file labeled F Society. Before he can explore further, He's interrupted by his assistant. Detectives want to speak with him about a body found on the roof. Tyrell brushes them off, but the weight of the situation clearly affects him. At Allsafe, Elliot arrives just as Gideon is assigning tasks to mitigate the hack. When Ollie nervously asks Elliot to take 2 hard drives to be destroyed, Elliot's suspicion grows. He hacks into Ollie's email and discovers frantic messages blaming Angela for the hack. Back at home, Tyrell and Joanna discuss their next move. Joanna believes blackmailing Sharon Knowles with incriminating photos will force her husband, Scott, to step down as CTO, opening the position for Tyrell. Tyrell, however, is hesitant and conflicted. On the street, Elliot runs into Angela and confronts her about Ollie. Angela admits Ollie was blackmailed after inserting a malicious CD into the Allsafe system. Elliot realizes the hack was a distraction and suspects it's connected to the Dark Army and the impending meeting. Elliot arrives at Blank's disk recovery to meet White Rose, the enigmatic leader of the Dark Army. The meeting takes place in a Faraday cage, cutting off all signals. White Rose, a meticulous trans woman, manages her time down to the second. She dismisses Elliot's explanations and tells him the real issue is F Society's failure to anticipate Gideon setting up a honeypot. She gives Elliot 50 hours to disable the honeypot, or the Dark Army will back out of the hack. She leaves, telling Elliot they will never meet again. Determined, Elliot returns to Allsafe and devises a plan to gain access to Gideon's phone to disable the honeypot. He uses a diversion, another F Society video targeting Allsafe, to distract the team. While everyone watches the video, Elliot sneaks into Gideon's office, retrieves his phone passcode, and successfully logs into the system to remove the honeypot. Meanwhile, Tyrell meets with Mr. Robot in his limo, seeking information about F Society's plans. Mr. Robot refuses to cooperate, warning Tyrell that revealing secrets would do more harm than good. Back at the Wellick residence, 2 detectives arrive, questioning Tyrell and Joanna about Sharon Knowles' murder. As Tyrell fumbles with answers, Joanna suddenly starts bleeding and collapses, revealing that she's induced labor with a fork to avoid suspicion. At Coney Island, Elliot and Darlene celebrate the success of their hack. In 43 hours, the honeypot will disappear, and their malware will take down E-Corp. Overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment, Elliot impulsively kisses Darlene. She pulls away in shock and anger, demanding to know what's wrong with him. Furious, she asks if he's forgotten who she is. Confused, Elliot blurts out her name, but in that instant, he realizes the truth. Darlene is his sister. Shocked and disoriented, Elliot stumbles through the city, questioning his sanity and wondering what else he might have forgotten. Once back in his apartment, he frantically searches through old files and photos, trying to make sense of his fractured memories. As he uncovers a family photo, there's a knock at the door. Mr. Robot stands outside, suggesting they need to talk. A flashback shows a computer and accessories store in October 1994. Edward Alderson, wearing a jacket that reads Mr. Robot, sits at the desk. His son, young Elliot, is in the back. A disgruntled customer enters, accusing Elliot of stealing a $20 bill during a previous visit. The man demands an apology and his money back, but Edward calmly refuses and asks him to leave. After the man storms out, Edward calls Elliot to the front. Elliot denies taking the money, but when his father extends his hand, Elliot reluctantly hands over the $20. Instead of punishment, Edward suggests they go to a movie together, demonstrating his protective nature despite knowing Elliot was in the wrong. Edward coughs heavily as they prepare to leave, hinting at his illness, but he brushes it off. Back in the present, Elliot is in shock as Mr. Robot stands before him, alive and in the flesh. Elliot's emotions swing between joy and rage, especially as Mr. Robot cryptically suggests that there are people trying to control him by keeping him medicated and detached from the truth, even from his own sister, Darlene. Outside the window, they spot a black van with suited men surveilling the apartment. Mr. Robot urges Elliot to leave with him before they act. Elliot, still reeling from the revelation of his father's presence, reluctantly follows him. Meanwhile, Gideon Goddard, the head of Allsafe, is getting dressed at home, visibly anxious. His partner, Harry Davis, tries to comfort him, but Gideon is overwhelmed with the weight of Allsafe's recent hack. He feels responsible for the company's likely demise, even as Harry reassures him that their relationship is solid, reminding him that failure isn't what Gideon fears it to be. Angela meets with Anthara Nair at her office, eager to help with the research. Anthara, however, rebuffs Angela, stating that Angela needs to find her own path and purpose now that she's left Allsafe. Angela's phone rings as she exits the office. It's Darlene, urgently seeking Elliot, worried that he's spiraling. Angela agrees to meet Darlene at a museum in hopes of finding Elliot. At a train station, Elliot and Mr. Robot prepare to board a train to New Jersey. Elliot is disoriented, unsure of where they're going, but increasingly convinced that they are being hunted. Despite his rising paranoia, Mr. Robot leads him onto the train, promising to reveal more. Meanwhile, Tyrell Wellick visits his wife Joanna in the hospital. She holds their newborn baby but drops a bombshell, revealing she had a child when she was 15 and gave it up for adoption. She coldly tells Tyrell that if he wants to stay in their family, he will fix the mess he's in. Gideon arrives at Blank's disc recovery, only to find it burned to the ground. The owner explains that everything was destroyed, leaving Gideon without the critical data he was after. Tyrell returns to his office, where he's met by Philip Price. Price delivers devastating news: Tyrell is a suspect in Sharon Knowles' murder, and regardless of the outcome, Tyrell's time at E-Corp is over. Price advises Tyrell to reflect on the mistakes that led him to this point. Enraged but powerless, Tyrell brushes past the detectives who once again try to question him. Elliot and Mr. Robot break into their old family home. As they explore, Elliot becomes fixated on a specific memory: the day Mr. Robot, his father, pushed him out of a window. Overcome with emotion, Elliot accuses Mr. Robot of being the source of his pain, both as a child and now. In a fit of rage, Elliot pushes Mr. Robot through the same window. Mr. Robot falls, crashing to the ground below. Angela and Darlene, still searching for Elliot, find themselves at Angela's old house. As they pass by Elliot's childhood home, they notice the broken window and realize something significant is happening. Elliot, now alone, rushes to the ground where Mr. Robot had fallen, only to find him wounded but still conscious. Mr. Robot leads him to a cemetery, where he sits down on a grave. Angela and Darlene finally catch up, and as they approach, they ask Elliot who he's talking to. Confused, Elliot looks at the grave and realizes it belongs to his father, Edward Alderson, who died in 1995. The wounds Mr. Robot sustained now appear on Elliot himself. The realization dawns on him: he is Mr. Robot. As the three of them return to the train station, Angela tries to comfort Elliot, but he insists he's far from okay. On the train, Darlene presses Elliot to remember why they started F Society, pushing him to stay focused despite his internal chaos. Back at E-Corp, Gideon learns that Tyrell has been fired. He seeks an audience with Scott Knowles but is informed it's impossible after what has just happened. Later, Angela returns home to find her father, Donald, sitting with Terry Colby and his lawyers. Colby, impressed by Angela's tenacity in the lawsuit, offers her a job at E-Corp, explaining that working from within is the only way to truly change things. Angela, though conflicted, is left to consider the opportunity. At Elliot's apartment, he spirals into confusion about what's real. Darlene, trying to support him, offers to fetch his medication. As soon as she leaves, Tyrell enters, startling Elliot. Tyrell, uncharacteristically shaken, admits he knows Elliot is behind F Society and all the recent hacks. He confesses to strangling Sharon Knowles, describing the moment as one of absolute power. Tyrell insists Elliot tell him the grand plan. Together, they head to F Society's hideout, where Tyrell is in awe of the operation. Elliot explains their plan: to encrypt all of E-Corp's financial data and destroy all backups, effectively erasing the corporation's history. Tyrell, filled with admiration, tells Elliot he always knew they would work together. Mr. Robot presses Elliot, demanding to know the reason behind everything. Elliot, lost in the depths of his own confusion, stares blankly before quietly admitting that all he ever wanted was to save the world. At a nighttime restaurant, Michael Henson meets Krista Gordon. They haven't seen each other in a while, and Krista is upset when she learns Michael lied about having cancer to get her to come. He reveals the real reason for the meeting: he wants to talk about her patient, Elliot Alderson. Michael claims Elliot hacked him and ruined his marriage, leaving him divorced and angry. He wants revenge. Michael tracked Elliot through his microchipped dog, but Elliot uses proxies, making him untraceable. He pressures Krista for information from her sessions with Elliot, but she refuses. As she walks away, Michael shouts in frustration, accusing that asshole of stealing his dog. Later, Michael eats takeout while watching TV news. He ignores most of it until he hears about global economic chaos, with countries like Estonia on the verge of collapse due to the E-Corp hack. He watches scenes of mass rallies and riots. Meanwhile, Elliot wakes up in a parked car. A parking lot attendant tells him he's been there for 2 days, as the credit card systems crashed after the hack. Elliot, confused, realizes he's in Tyrell's car but can't remember why. He walks off as the attendant warns the car will be towed. Angela arrives at E-Corp and heads to her desk. The office is busy, and everyone is hard at work. At the F Society hideout, Elliot returns. The others are dismantling systems and wiping drives. Darlene explains that the hack was successful, but Elliot is consumed by his own thoughts, wondering what happened to Tyrell. She tries to shift the conversation, mentioning how people are eager to join F Society. However, Elliot remains distant and disconnected. Without offering any help, he leaves, quietly stating that he had warned her they shouldn't have done this. At Allsafe, Gideon and the CFO discuss the dire situation. The CFO suggests it's time to shut down. Gideon argues they could bounce back, but the CFO insists there's no escaping their financial crisis, especially since their biggest client, E-Corp, is collapsing. Elliot visits the 23rd floor of the E-Corp building. He walks through chaotic hallways filled with anxious workers and executives. He can't understand why Tyrell let this happen. He asks Tyrell's assistant where he is, and she tells him Tyrell no longer works there. Suddenly, an F Society video plays on a nearby TV. The masked figure announces that E-Corp's financial data is destroyed and the people of the world are free. Crowds in the streets cheer, many wearing F Society masks. Angela is now assisting James Plouffe, E-Corp's EVP for tech, as he prepares for a live TV interview. He nervously asks her to hold his bag of important papers. When the interview begins, Plouffe tries to explain how E-Corp is handling the crisis, but as the conversation turns darker, he admits on air that there's no fixing the situation. He reaches into his bag, pulls out a gun, and shoots himself on live TV. Angela, shocked, is questioned by police. Philip Price approaches her and suggests she take time to recover. He then praises her for fitting in well at E-Corp and asks her to attend a press conference later. Elliot returns to Tyrell's car, searching for clues. He finds a USB drive hidden in the sunroof but grows frustrated when nothing happens after he retrieves it. Desperate, he heads to an internet cafe to check the drive. The only file on it is a video of the boardwalk where Elliot and Mr. Robot had talked. The video reveals that Elliot was alone the whole time. There was no Mr. Robot pushing him off the railing. Realizing the truth, Elliot decides to get himself arrested and confesses to 911. But Mr. Robot suddenly appears, stopping him. At the store, Angela buys new heels after her bloody ones were ruined during the TV incident. The salesman is stunned by her calmness after witnessing someone's death, but she brushes off his comments and focuses on buying the shoes. Back at the cafe, Elliot confronts Mr. Robot, demanding to know where Tyrell is. He becomes enraged, grabbing Mr. Robot and choking him, but to everyone else, it looks like Elliot is choking himself. Mr. Robot reminds Elliot that they are the same person. When someone punches Mr. Robot, Elliot falls to the ground. Mr. Robot stands over Elliot and, in a low voice, whispers that Elliot is supposed to be his god. At E-Corp, Angela watches as Philip Price delivers a moment of silence for James Plouffe. She feels conflicted, knowing the man was deeply troubled, but Price casually admits he was glad Plouffe killed himself, as he was a weak man. At the F Society hideout, partygoers fill the room, celebrating the hack's success. Darlene is ecstatic, while others wonder what comes next. Mobley questions their future, but Darlene insists they enjoy their victory for now. Elliot, walking through the crowded streets, is haunted by thoughts of Tyrell. He believes Mr. Robot killed him. Mr. Robot gets angry, slamming Elliot against a wall. Elliot's mother and younger self appear behind Mr. Robot, urging Elliot to trust him. Mr. Robot explains that the world itself is built on lies, created by corporations. Everything is artificial, but to Elliot, Mr. Robot is real. Elliot, overwhelmed, shouts out that he wants to be left alone. He closes his eyes, and when he opens them, the crowded streets are empty. A screen lights up with an image of Mr. Robot, Magda, and young Elliot. Mr. Robot reminds Elliot of his loneliness and how he begged them to come back. They are all part of him, and he can't escape them. Mr. Robot encourages him to listen, assuring him that the world is better because of what they did. Elliot, weakened and confused, asks what to do next. Mr. Robot tells him to go home. Elliot listens and heads to the subway, ready to return to his apartment, unsure of what's real but knowing he can't escape the voices in his head.